All right, we are live. Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Danny Batsalkin. This is Danny B Live. And today, guys, I'm so excited to welcome Jason Saft to the show. We're going to bring him on in just a second. Jason is an awesome real estate agent at Compass in New York City. We seem to be having a lot of New York guests. And I'm not a huge fan of New York, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. But that's awesome. I love talking to people from other parts of the country. Jason is a real estate agent. He also owns a staging company. He's going to talk to us about getting an awesome return on investment on your listing when you put it up on the market and all kinds of other things, real estate, entrepreneurship, and fun stuff like that. On this channel, you guys, what I talk about is real estate business and finance, and my mission and my passion is to help you make great decisions in those areas of your life. If you're a buyer, seller, investor, we're here to help on the real estate side. If you're a real estate agent or you want to get into real estate, then I got a lot of cool stuff for you. I want to help you create a business that's predictable, that's profitable, and that's fun. So having said all of that, let's rock and roll. We'll welcome Jason in just a second. Let's make it happen today on Danny B Live. Let's go. All right, and here we go. We got Jason live. So Jason, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on and joining us here today. Awesome to have you, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Excited. Wait, so you're not a fan of New York?
Yeah, I didn't tell you that yesterday. We did a little preview of the show yesterday, and I purposely didn't tell you that. Yeah, man, you know, I'm a California guy. I've been here all my life, and every time I go to New York, I just always feel like everyone's in too much of a rush.
They are. You're right.
I actually got a funny story for you about that. So my wife's family, we're Russian, so my wife's family lives in Brooklyn, a bunch of them. And so we went to visit, and I remember in the morning, what is cool about New York is, like, you know, we got up, I went downstairs, I went to go get food, and it was like Saturday morning, so I went to the bagel shop, and I'm in line, and like this like lady behind me is like pacing and stomping, and she's like, hurry up, everyone, let's go. And I'm like, yo, it's Saturday.
Yeah. That sounds like me. I'm that lady. Yeah, waiting in line is just like painful. No, but it's funny because typically you find here, like, you're stuck behind someone that, like, there's only a limited amount of things you can order. Like, we all know what we're getting.
Right.
And yeah, we're all in a rush here, but you're always stuck behind that one person who takes 15 minutes to order like a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and it wasn't me, but it was just funny. And it's like, I feel like that every time. And I just also, you know, like with all the buildings and stuff, I think I would really like, because people have told me I would really like upstate New York, you know, the country and land and all that kind of stuff, which I really enjoy. So, but yeah, that's my, you know, California guy. Although I do like, you know, Texas and some other places where a lot of people are moving from LA right now. But we'll save that for a different episode. Anyhow, you guys, thanks for joining us today. We got Jason Saft, Staged to Sell, on the show, and I'm super excited to chat about real estate, business, entrepreneurship, staging homes, and all kinds of good stuff. You know, but before we do that, you know, I'd just love for you to give us a little background on how you got into real estate and, you know, your journey from, you know, getting started to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. So it was really interesting. My background is actually entertainment marketing and PR. And almost 20 years ago, I was still young, living in New York, starting out. The apartment that I was living in became infested with rats overnight. They literally ate through a wall in the apartment and took over the entire apartment. We never went back. And so this is 20 years ago, before iPhones, before aggregation, where you know, you look for apartments in the back of a newspaper, but it was like Twitter, right? It was like copy. It didn't fully make sense. It was honestly the most challenging experience I'd ever had, and it was, we were going through so much. Like, we lost the stuff that we had. I mean, it was just destroyed, man. And I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and I was like, this should be easier and this should be better. And I had always loved the process of house hunting. I'd help friends buy an apartment, and a friend of mine was a real estate agent, and he just looked at me, he's like, if ever there was anyone who should be working in real estate. So that was about 20 years ago, and that was really the start of it, as I felt like the frustrations and issues we were having with information, people understanding our needs, like, I could do a better job. And that's how I got into it.
Awesome. And see, 20 years later, you and I both have the gray beards because of it.
You. course.
By the way, guys, I want to remind you, if you're watching the show live here on YouTube, I want to thank you. Appreciate you guys. Throw your comments and your questions into the chat box, not the comment box, because that goes in the actual show, but the chat box. And Jason and I will answer them for you live on the air. We'll say hello to you, speaking of which we have Riva watching, and Riva says, hey, guys, what's up? Riva, thanks for tuning in. So Jason, you're in New York, you get started. I have heard that, New York is like one of the hardest places to break into real estate. So for all of our newer agents, or maybe people that want to get into real estate, talk to us about, how was that first, 3 months, 6 months, year? What happened, and how'd you get in and break in and make your way into becoming a successful agent?
Yeah, I often go back in my head to that period because it's, when you're starting out and you're trying to figure everything out, I think that's when, just as a human being, you're the most creative and you get the most resourceful and you try the hardest. And that was really sort of, I took every frustration I had. Like, I lost the bulk of my possessions. I had nowhere to live. It was staying with friends. And I used that when I started working with people. And so, they often say, find your specialty, find your niche. And when you're starting out in an industry, and the industry was different 20 years ago than it is today, my niche was, one, the people I knew, if I could help someone from my previous profession. But when I would be out with clients and talking with them, I found that my niche was being a human being and a professional and having a career discipline. And so I came from a very disciplined career where we had a lot of structure. We're always sending reports. Everything was very detailed. It was like a truly structured business. And so I brought that to real estate. And I found that that's what was a differentiator at that time. People were running around with other rental agents who just got their license from some, fly-by-night school and didn't come from another career discipline. And they didn't understand how to take information that was given to them and sort of translate that into the home. And that's what I did, is I just would ask people questions. What is important to you? Tell me where you live now and what makes you want to leave it. What are you looking for? And you start to ask those questions and find that information out. And I found for that first year, that's all I really needed.
Wow, that's awesome, Jason. It's interesting you say that, because I was a lawyer before I got into real estate, and I found the same thing, that if you bring any type of real career discipline, corporate world, attorney, professional salesperson, you do really well in real estate if you apply that, because most agents are just not doing that. They're waking up at 10 and stopping at 3, and they think they'll make $1 million in the first year. It doesn't happen.
Nice, yeah, like on a reality show. But yeah,
yes,
it sounds lovely.
Yes,
it's not the reality of it.
That's right. So, Jason, you built your business kind of on the back of that. I'd like to fast forward a little bit. How did the staging company come about, and if you could talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I founded Stage to Sell Home, and it really just came from basic sort of guidelines and principles that I wrote about 15 years ago, once I started to bring in my own listings, and once I started to handle accounts and handle a portfolio of buildings. And, a lot of it to me is it's problem solving. I love decor and design, and I love that the way that you create a home creates emotion, it creates feeling, it can make you feel better than you are, it can inspire you. But, from a business perspective within real estate, it's essentially problem solving. And so I brought in a portfolio of rental buildings in the West Village. Great neighborhood, great location. These were 200 square foot, 1-bedroom apartments, geared towards young professionals who are probably just out of school or maybe going to NYU. And, in the first few months, I just kept getting the same feedback. Room is too small. This is not a bedroom. And so it is a bedroom. And I went through a series of exercises where I would take out a tape measure and say, here, look, you could put the bed here. I would watch people react. And, listen, real estate agents don't have the greatest reputation or association. People think you're just sort of like making it up as you go. And I find, there's a difference in sort of what you tell someone and what you show someone. And their brain sort of registers things very differently when they can visually see something. And so, I looked at it from a perspective of, every time I have one of these showings, I have to spend the time to coordinate the showing, the back and forth, the travel time, the physical showing, but I'm always getting the same feedback. So how do I change the end result? And so one day I went to the landlord and said, how about instead of a price drop, we spend, $300, get these pieces in to create a bedroom. That's always the feedback. Oh, the previous agent, that's what they had always said. So it's like, okay, that's the problem. Let's solve it. And so from putting the bed in, it was a bed that we could easily break down, put apart. We'd rent an apartment, put in the next one, the next, the next. And I realized I started to have a lot more free time. I didn't have to show these apartments that often. I didn't have to go back and forth as often. We didn't have to do the price drops. We didn't have to negotiate as much. And the landlord became really receptive. And he knew that there was something fundamentally shifted by showing this. And so then we started to cosmetically update apartments. Then we would do whole apartments, and we would transfer this inventory to a different building because it became more cost effective. And that's really how it all started. The dynamic of people coming in, walking into a fully furnished, detailed apartment that also connected to and spoke to someone in this demographic. It made sense. People walked in and said, like, this is the type of space I want to live in. And that's really how all of this started. It was just some problem solving in a rental apartment. I wanted to save time. I wanted to take my schedule back. And that's really like what good design will help do.
I love it, Jason. I'll tell you, I've been a huge proponent of staging for such a long time. I mean, pretty much ever since I started in real estate and I saw some staged homes. I think I was telling you a story yesterday. I remember as a kid, like, when I'd go with my parents and we'd see model homes, I'd be like, oh, you got to buy that one, because it just looks nice. It smells good. It's clean. You don't have to look at all the people's personal photos that you don't care about and all this kind of stuff. And so I just think it's a great service. Now, here's the question I guess I would have for you. A lot of sellers will ask, and this is a question I got on social media, do you actually get an ROI from staging? Because you have to spend the money up front. I mean, we're going to talk about some alternatives to that in a sec, but in classical terms, you got to spend the money up front. Are you going to get an ROI on the back end?
Yes. In most cases, and now it's a little different just looking at the markets that we're in and due to the pandemic,
Right.
Whereas sometimes right now, 6 months ago, if we were having this conversation, I would be pulling out metrics that show a return on investment, sort of what you could put in and what you can get out. Whereas now in some scenarios, we're talking about as an insurance policy to ensure that your apartment sells within the course of a full year on market.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's costs associated with that. If you're not living in a unit and you're spending $5,000 a month in carrying costs here, it's a substantial outlay. So typically, I mean, you're looking at like anywhere from, you could get a 20 to 100% return on investment. And so the staging work that I do is a little bit different than most common stagers, where a lot of times most people are thinking about renting furniture short term. Like I'm going in again with 20 years of experience as a broker, and I'm picking apart the things that everything is something that a buyer can use as leverage to take your price down.
Right.
So oftentimes we start at like that moment of entry. Like, how does it look? What's it feel like? Curb appeal is different in New York than it is in most other parts of the country. And then we're sort of looking at all those like tangible textural things. If you go to open a closet, the doorknob is 25 years old and scuffed and dirty. That's a $10 fix. But in a buyer's brain, that's a renovation. You start creating this, like, they start to pick apart these things and say, this is a gut job. So
Yep.
You're asking X, but I'm going to give you Y because I need to renovate it. Whereas when we go in and we do those little things of swapping out 20, 30-year-old light fixtures, doorknobs, covering up parquet floors, taking kitchens that haven't been renovated in a half a century, painting the cabinets, putting in new hardware, we're shifting perceptions of a gut job to people coming in and saying like, oh, I'd like to do some work on this. Maybe I'll customize this one thing here, one thing there. And so there's a lot of different ways to sort of equate and the value. But yes, you're typically looking at a substantial return on investment, even if you're only investing a small amount between $5,000 and $10,000 to paint, do cosmetic work, and maybe fix up a few key areas.
Oh, that's great, Jason. So it sounds like your company actually does, like you said, a slightly different version, because a lot of people, when they think staging, they just think, bring some furniture in, move some furniture around. But this is like a real evaluation of, what things do we need to fix? Do we need to paint? Stuff like that. So it's really getting the property ready to sell.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's basically like we start at the ceiling and work our way down to the floors and find everything out there that we can change.
Awesome. And, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, we really look for the things that need to be changed. And sometimes, again, the idea or perception of staging is just renting furniture. There's times where I'll remove, let's say, instead of furnishing 4 bedrooms, if they're all a great size, it makes more sense to put that money into cosmetic things and adding in lighting or painting or fixing up floors or updating something that hasn't been touched in decades.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, on that note, we do have a question from our viewers. You guys, by the way, do want to remind you, for all of you that are just joining us a little bit late, we got Jason Saft on, real estate broker and also owner of Staged to Sell in New York, talking real estate, staging, return on investment, and all kinds of cool stuff. We got a great question on the topic you just covered, which is, what is the number one most important room to stage in the house?
Statistically, it's the living room, but I always look at that like moment of entry as the most important thing, because that first 5 seconds sets the tone for absolutely everything. So the living room is key, but again, as people are thinking about this and you're going into spaces, or even if you're walking into a store, anything, like, what is it that immediately gets you excited? You want to be there. You feel like this is a space you need to be in. Or what turns you off? Is there a bad smell, bad lighting, some busted, broken down? Like, that to me is the most important thing, because it's the person's brain just starts to register at that moment.
So, Jason, tell me if I'm wrong on this. I've always told clients, and this is totally just like my gut and the feedback I've gotten, because clients always ask me, well, it's expensive. How about we just stage the living room and this room and the master, but we'll leave all these other rooms alone? And I have always told them, again, this is my gut, but I want to get the expert's opinion here. I have always said, no, not an option. Because every time I've done that, what happens is the buyers come in and they go, oh, this all looks so nice. And then they walk into that empty room that wasn't staged and they go, what the hell? Did they run out of money? What's wrong with this room? Why is there no furniture here? So what do you think about that?
I think it really depends on the market and the listing, and
Okay.
how big is the space. Again, here in New York, like, if you're leaving out one room, it's like, as a percentage, it's a lot, but it may not be that big of an issue if the room is a great size and there's nothing
Okay.
wrong with it, and you're making sure that everything else is so perfect. And this is the difference of like using really nice pieces, using really good artwork, making sure it looks good, feels good, smells good. Is there music on in the background? Like, if someone is really vibing and connecting with the space, and it's a 5 or 7 bedroom, it may not financially make sense to do every single room, because typically you're distilling down everything else.
Right.
So it really depends on the market and what kind of return they're looking for. If someone bought a property 30 years ago and they have so much equity built up in it, they're not going to be sort of open to the same things that someone who bought a space 5 years ago. And what they invest in it now could be the difference of a substantial profit or breaking even. The other side of it is, this is a taxable expense. So there are, you can write this off as a marketing expense for listing a property. And again, I also look at it from the perspective of time. Time is really important for everyone. If it's going to increase days on market, which increases the opportunity for price drops, if the cost to stage something is a fraction of a price drop, you're much better off proactively doing it ahead of time. But again, overall, you have to just evaluate the market.
Yeah, and Jason, that's such a good point. And it's something that I probably don't talk about enough when I talk to sellers is, your carrying costs on a property, like you said, if you factor that in and you could sell it faster and you don't have to do a price drop, there's your investment right there. By the way, you gave the much more PC answer on should I stage the whole house. I'm like, yes, you're staging the whole house. Like, don't give me this you're leaving one room open BS.
I like to give people, again, it's different here when you sometimes only have 4 or 5 rooms.
Right.
And I find, if they'll only do a certain budget, when you're doing that much work, if you have to dumb down everything else just to, on paper, do another bedroom and the bedroom is fine, there's nothing wrong with it. I'd rather have everything else be amazing, because most people know that this bedroom is a bedroom. It's a good size. You could fit a queen or a king bed in there. But yeah, you have to take it case by case.
Totally. Hey, you guys, if you're just joining us, we just had a bunch of people hop on. Just want to remind you can ask your questions right in that chat box, wherever you see that on the YouTube video. We'll answer them live. We're talking real estate. We're talking entrepreneurship. We're talking staging and all kinds of other good stuff. So a couple more questions for you, Jason, on staging. And then I do want to talk about, just entrepreneurship, how you run both companies, and some other cool questions for you. In terms of staging, what do you find is, kind of the approximate, typical, usual cost or range to stage a property? And then, you guys, we're going to tell you how you can do this without actually paying for it up front in just a second. But first, what does this cost?
So it really depends upon the size of the property and listing. So in New York City, on average, like a 1-bedroom for a really quality job, you're looking at about a $10,000 sort of like starting price point. You can find people that do things a lot cheaper, and sellers can take on a lot of this on their own, and agents can do a lot of this on their own and cut the price down. You just usually end up with a much more sort of generic, clinical space that looks something like, like a Comfort Inn, like an hour away from Atlanta.
That's right.
Go to Atlanta. It's just, you see these sort of like quasi-suburban looking generic spaces.
Yeah.
Done for like $6,000.
Yep, exactly. No, I agree. And it's so that's for a 1-bedroom. Let's say you have, well, you guys don't really have houses there, but let's say you have a bigger apartment, maybe 3-4 bedroom, nice size. What would something like that cost to stage?
Anywhere from $40,000 to $150,000. Really depends. I mean, you're looking at the top tier of the market here is $100 million.
Wow.
And a $10 to $15 million price point is not uncommon.
Sure.
So the price scale really varies here.
Gotcha.
There's different methodologies. Sometimes rules of thumb could be about, you're looking at around 1% of the sale price. That changes a little bit when you're looking at more economical units that are like outside of the city center. Whereas you could get a 2 or 3 bedroom for maybe $800,000. It's very hard to squeeze out that much furniture. Because, the one thing to sort of keep in mind is you're also paying for all the labor to get an entire apartment delivered in the course of like 2 or 3 days, set up, the creative, the labor. And again, like we work with a lot of things that transfer to the new owner. So those fixed costs are then applied in, like wallpaper, light fixtures,
sure,
paint, hardware, and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, I think it's one of the most important things. I think so many sellers neglect that portion of the listing, which is preparing the home for sale properly, and they'll just dump it on the market, and then they wonder why it doesn't sell or why they have to reduce the price and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a hot market or not a hot market. This still applies the same way for sure. So, Jason, what I want to talk about is Compass, which is the brokerage where you and I both are. I wore my Compass shirt today because I knew you were going to be on. By the way, guys, if you're watching this, give us a thumbs up. I forgot to mention if you like the content, and also ask a question. We'll answer it. I have a bunch of questions that people sent me from social media after our preview yesterday, but I want to ask your live questions if you got them. So back to, we're both at Compass. Compass has this really sweet program. I'm newer to Compass. We came over this year with our team. And they have this really sweet program called Compass Concierge, where they will actually front all the money up front. There's caps and stuff like that at 0%, no fee. You can use that money to do improvements and also to stage the property, and then you pay it back at closing. So I wanted to ask you, are you utilizing that program? Not for this to be a promotion for Compass, but I think it's a great thing. And also, are your clients enjoying it?
I mean, it's a complete game changer. That is, the root of this program was, the number one roadblock in people doing what you're saying, where sellers don't want to put there's just a mental block of having to put money into something you're trying to get out of for a lot of people. That is the, like, when you boil it down at the core, that's often what you get. Like, I don't want to dump, I don't want to sink, I don't want to pour,
Right.
but it's an investment. That's the, like, and it's helping to shift the understanding of it. It's like, we forget that these are the things that often, when I go into a space, people will say, like, oh, I wanted to do that. I've been talking about doing that for 10 years. I've been talking about doing that for 15 years. So what people haven't done over a decade can be done in the course of a few days or a week. And it's what makes the property, what brings the value up and increases the return on investment. And, Compass very intelligently and strategically realized this was one of the things that sellers just didn't feel comfortable doing, and they made it easy. It's been a complete game changer, and it's helped. I think, the perception of staging here in New York City has changed so much, and I think it's one of the biggest factors. It's just become easy when you understand that you can pay this cost at closing as opposed to out of pocket. Listen, while we have these sort of like perceptions of New York when we're talking about all this like 10 million and 100 million, a lot of the real estate we do is bread and but 2 bedrooms, 900,000, 2 kids in school,
Sure.
Two working parents. Like, to lay out 10, 15 grand, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
People have a lot of expenses, and it's nerve wracking where, I'll tell someone point blank, like, I could show you a book of 100 examples of where this has worked, how it's worked, what it's increased, the properties that went from no offers to all cash sold. But you can never promise someone, like, I'm going to come in and do this and it's going to increase 6 figures, magically overnight. Like, there are metrics, obviously, but, you never want to, like, mislead someone, because, like we're seeing now with the market that we're in, things changed overnight in a way that no one ever predicted. But this is something by far and large that will help ensure the home sells for the highest return on investment.
Yeah, Jason, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've used the program a couple times on a few listings, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, first of all, like you said, it's super easy to use. So if you're a seller and you're watching this, or if you're an agent and you want to switch brokerages, this is such a great program, and we've really enjoyed it. So that's awesome. We got a couple live questions for you, Jason, here from our viewers. First one is from Elena. Elena says, "What are you seeing, Jason, now in terms of virtual staging, virtual reality, and also other tech advancements in staging?"
Yeah, the virtual staging has really upped its game lately. There were a few firms that were doing sort of all the same. It was starting to all look the same. It's definitely gotten much more realistic. What's interesting is during shelter in place, we saw this major shift to everything going digital. But as people started returning back to doing tours, property tours, showings, what I'm noticing is the people that were doing tours of empty apartments then needed to get them staged because they weren't showing well. The interesting thing is, like, there's a lot of buildings here that are built without overhead lighting. You're north facing on a third floor. Even if you're showing at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you may not have lighting. And if you just put a couple lamps on the floor, like, it doesn't look good. It looks pretty ghoulish, and all of a sudden you just see these like dark pits with this one bright spot. So it's been interesting because as virtual staging and virtual renderings have really sort of the cost to do it has gotten cheaper, the quality has gotten better, but oddly enough, I'm seeing more of a shift to real staging through all of this, even as things are going virtual. The VR, the virtual reality tech that I've seen is pretty mind-blowing too. It's trippy.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten used to it yet.
But I don't know, this is me personally, but I just think, like, real estate, you still got to go and look at it and touch it and feel it and picture yourself living there. It's not like buying a car or something else. I mean, I've bought cars sight unseen because I know what it's going to be, right? But this is a little different.
It depends on what we're talking about, because the reality is people do buy homes off floor plans and sales galleries all the time. But when someone is buying new development, they're typically, what I find from my experiences, they're a little bit more savvy. This is not their primary residence. They're often not raising a family in it. They're maybe buying it as a long-term investment strategy as opposed to the type of buyer that's buying their home. And those are the buyers who want to come, see it, feel it out, see it laid out, may not have the imagination if you have awkward and odd layouts. Like, those are the ones where you really need to shift to it. So I personally believe that virtual staging and the VR, like it has its place. I think that people are going to get more and more comfortable with buying apartments sight unseen. Um, but I think staging as a whole will tend to increase and will also shift as well, and sort of like the needs and the understanding. Right now, I always tried to create a workspace in a home, but now everything is like we're looking at and examining floor plans and layouts very differently. How can two people work from home? Is there a space for the kid to also work and be creative and things like that? So we're all sort of looking at everything that's going and trying to adjust to sort of the reality of the market.
Jason, that's so true. I was just thinking about like we in our house, luckily we have the room, but like we're making like desks in corners and where are the kids going to do their school and all this crazy stuff that you never really had to think about before. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
When you talk about that return on investment and that experience, that's where, someone whose background and their other job is brokerage, that's where you start to get the better return on investment, as opposed to, in theory, I need to rent a couch and a console and a TV. Like that's renting short-term furniture. But if you're looking to make sure that your home checks off every box, because buyers now have a different list of needs and demands, that's what really good staging will do. Will address all of that.
Yep, 100%. Well, Jason, this has been, fantastic talking about staging. I'm a huge supporter and proponent of that. And you guys, if you're watching and you're a seller, when you get your home ready for sale, this is definitely something that's super important. And you got to pick someone that's good. I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of talk about the business aspect of what you do. And, as a coach who helps real estate agents and teams, I'm fascinated by how you run a couple of companies and all of that good stuff. But before we do that, I'd love for you to share with our audience, where you sell real estate, because if we have agents on here or buyers or sellers, how they can get in touch with you. We'll put all of your contact info down below. And for agents, so they can refer you business. So tell us where in New York you sell and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I work and my team works throughout Manhattan. We work in all the different neighborhoods, and I have partners in Queens as well. Also do a lot of work in Brooklyn, different neighborhoods and areas here. So we're pretty well versed in pretty much everything. I grew up here and have been living in the city for 20 years, and we're coming to you from my apartment in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So pretty well versed all throughout. And one thing I would say, if you want to follow along on Instagram, Stage to Sell Home, we show really the work that we do. It's more than just like showcasing a listing. It's really the process of how we go in and sort of dissect these properties and the methodology and all the tricks that we use and like the cost-effective things and a lot of the stuff that we do while it's specific to staging and marketing property. But there's a lot of things that are really relatable to how you can live in a home better, how you can function better. Because we are talking about creating the best possible space. So while it may be staging, there's a lot of stuff in there for living.
Yeah, you guys definitely follow Jason on Instagram, both of his accounts. We will put those down in the description below. You make a good point, by the way, because every time we stage a house, the seller always comes in and they go, oh, wow, like I should have done this years ago and lived like this. So that happens every time. Good stuff. Well, Jason, let's switch gears a little bit. I'd love to talk about kind of the business aspect of this. So essentially you're running two different companies. You have your real estate team and what you do there, and then you have the staging company. How do you manage and oversee those, both of those companies effectively?
Yeah, the nice thing is they're two completely interconnected, work together, complementary businesses. They really, I almost don't really look at them as two separate things. They are, and I work with a ton of other agents in New York and at Compass to work on their properties for them. It's not just my own listings, and that's sort of how this was. This was the hobby that I was doing within my properties that sort of organically grew into its own large business. But I really look at them as sort of like one interconnected thing. It's like the body. There's different parts of it, but they all work together. That's the nice thing. It's all sort of seamless.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. The businesses, like you said, are so complementary to each other. So, in in your success and kind of your journey to where you've gotten, as a coach myself who coaches a lot of agents and teams, and I have coaches, I'm always curious, along the way, have you had any coaches or mentors, and how'd they help you get to where you are?
Yeah, I've had several, but I think my biggest mentor, coach, and friend is Gordon Golub, who's a senior managing director at Compass. Um, he was the EVP at City Habitats, the former brokerage firm that I was at, about starting almost 20 years ago. And so he was essentially the first hire of Urban Compass back in 2013.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and he was the only one with real estate experience. The founders came from technology and the financial world. And they brought Gordon on board, and everything was sort of flying under the radar. No one really knew what it was. And it was a very different company at the original inception.
Right.
And Gordon and I had coffee one day back in 2013. And he looked different than I remembered him. This was a guy who, I was convinced came out of the womb in a suit. Just like he was in a corner office with, the receptionist was out front, always in a suit. And we went and had coffee, and he was in shorts and I think sandals. And I didn't recognize him. I'd never seen this guy casual. And he was glowing, and he looked 10 pounds lighter and younger. And I was like, holy shit, what, and he's like, yeah, it's just, working here in this tech startup in this environment. And so we had coffee, and I went up to the office and met Refkin, and he was like, I want you to come work here too. And so that was, almost 8 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've been there since the very beginning, and that has really sort of fueled the growth of this, and honestly, my own personal growth. Like this, Compass now, it's this nationwide brokerage. It's probably close to 20,000 people combined. There's over 200 offices. It's a top 3 firm. It's a top 3 firm in New York. This was a tech startup with beanbag chairs and a shared bathroom. And it was unrecognizable to what anyone knows today. And every day was just something different and wild. And to be honest, it was really fun. I was in my 30s. I could take a risk, and if it didn't work, I could go back to a different brokerage firm. But seeing that, and seeing the one thing I've always really loved there is they're very comfortable admitting failure, and admitting when they've done something that just isn't right. And that's so rare within real estate. Typically real estate, especially in New York, it operates under certain premises. A lot of just old white men who, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Right.
The industry that I came from was decimated by technology. I worked with record labels that all went out of business when Napster and LimeWire and pirating came along. The iPod, had come along several years later and changed business. And that was always a really valuable lesson on how technology is transforming everything. And that opportunity to me was one of the most incredible moments in my life. And I never looked back, and I never, they were like, we want you to come work here. And I was there a week later. It didn't have to be wine, dine. There was I just was like, I'm in.
Oh man, that's so cool. I didn't know that you've been there, since the beginning. We're, like I said, we're fairly new. We came right before the pandemic, great timing.
I always joke now, I'm like the holdover tenant that came with the building. I've been there so long. I'm just still there. Yeah.
No, that's great. But I'll tell you, we've really enjoyed it. I've kind of done a lot of different things in real estate. I've had my own brokerage. I've owned franchises. I've owned brokerages. And this has been a fantastic experience. Some of my buddies from my old company always ask me, how is it and all this stuff. And I always tell them, this is the first time I feel like, hey, we just have all this support. We have all this tech, new stuff coming all the time, and we could just focus on growing our business and not on all the other nonsense. So it's super cool. Definitely. We've really enjoyed it. So that's great. Well, that's a good mentor to have. So Jason, question for you. You talked about failure just now. I think we learn probably more from our failures than we do from our successes. What's been one failure you've had that you can think of that you could share, and kind of what you learned from that experience?
One failure.
Here's the
Like
part
a
where I ask you the hard questions.
bad one. No, I'm kidding. Uh, I at times I think earlier on I wasn't as direct as I needed to be with people, and I tried to sort of placate them, or I tried to tell people and act in a way of what they're sort of communicating that they need, but it's actually not. And sometimes when you're hiring a professional, I often explain to people like they're hiring me to tell them the things that they don't want to hear.
Right.
They're hiring me to deal with the things that they haven't wanted to deal with. And I think earlier on, when you're starting out, you're just trying to build a business, get clients and get busy. And sometimes you don't have that confidence or experience to say to someone, listen, like, I get where you're coming from. I understand all of your hesitations, your reservations. Like I truly like, you've said them, let's go through each one so we can really talk about them. It's not just lip service and someone saying like, I got it. But I definitely earlier on would not do what needed to be done in order to execute for them. And I was doing what they were telling me that they wanted, and it wasn't what they needed.
I think that's a good one for sure, and that's definitely an important skill for real estate agents. Definitely. So yeah, this is the part where I ask you all the tough, fun questions though that people want to
Okay.
know. Jason, one of the things I get asked a lot by newer agents is they'll say, hey, you're interviewing someone and they're already successful and they're already getting all this business coming from everywhere, and so this is one of my favorite questions to ask is like, okay, if I took you and I flew you over to LA and you had to start all over again, what would those first 30, 60, 90 days look like for you to build a business?
Am I building the same business?
You can build any business you want.
Oh, uh,
But in real estate, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
if you just had to start all over and you didn't have your team and your successful company and all this kind of stuff, and you just had to start from scratch, what would you do?
The number one thing is ask questions. It really, like, no matter what you do, I think you really need to understand if you're providing a service for people, you have to know what people, and it goes back to the last one, like what people need and want. And sometimes they don't know exactly what they need or what they want, or sometimes people don't want to spend the money for what they truly need and want. But by asking those questions and trying to understand what the real needs are, I think that's the best way to shape a business. And then, understanding the right way to network. I'm involved in a lot of like national staging organizations and trade organizations, and I see a lot of younger people starting out with all the things and ways that they can advertise and all the things that they can do. And a lot of them I think are really spinning wheels, and you have to understand sort of
Mm-hmm.
who is your customer, right? Who is the customer client, and how do you go after them? And so I think a lot of people, if we're talking staging, um, they start to think of like, I should be on Google this, I should do on that, where at the end of the day, your clients, they're not the one-off home seller, they're the real estate agent, and
Uh-huh.
they're the real estate brokerage firm. So you want to start to make the inroads and network with who the true clients are. And that's even if the real estate agents are the ones that are cutting the check and signing the agreement, they're the ones who are bringing in those relationships and that repeat business. And you really have to understand that and sort of tailor your business in ways that, I always look at it because the work that I do in terms of the apartment, I also, through the Stage to Sell Home Instagram, we have a really wide audience. We reach a lot of people. We communicate and talk with a lot of people in a way that other brokers can't and don't know how to do. And so the work that I do doesn't necessarily stop within the apartment. Like I spend an obsessive amount of time trying to then take all of these projects, putting them in front of people on a day-to-day basis in different ways. And again, sometimes it could be over the course of a year. It's not just a week. And I help bring in showings and traffic to listings through that. So again, it's while you're maybe saying like for staging, it's furniture, but at the end of the day, like I'm also working on making sure those properties sell for the highest return on investment. And if I have the opportunity to bring in other brokers or buyers through my own network, but also have spent years building that up, Like that's a really important thing to do for people, is to understand, that the foundational stuff, but that added value, and why will someone work with you over someone else? So what other things can you offer, that come natural to you that maybe don't to everyone else in that sort of marketplace?
For sure. I think that's a great point. And, you mentioned kind of knowing your target market. I think that's kind of marketing 101 for sure. So Jason, clearly you're super passionate about the staging part of it. Quick question for you on the real estate part of it, because, if we have agents on who are trying to get business, especially in a pandemic, what would you do in those first 90 days to get real estate clients if you had to start all over?
Yeah, it's important for that person to understand who they are and who they're connected to. A lot of people look at sort of all these like reality shows and, the million, like I'm going to like, here I am, penthouse goals, right? But like, if you're 23 years old and you just finished college and you don't know people with money, I think you look like an arrogant prick, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, but if you know people who are working and who are young and the rental market is completely down and you can get a great apartment and you could show, here's where this was a year ago, here's where it is today, you're showing value and you're going to get clients because you understand your sphere and who you're connected to. In the same regard with apartments for sale, like prices have come down.
Mm-hmm.
So while a lot of people are sort of sitting on their couch at home saying, I have nothing to do, if it's not a listing of mine, I look for things that I believe are values that have so much room to increase, and I put them in front of people. It's really about saying, everyone here in New York says, I wish I bought an apartment here at this point in time. This is that point in time right now. So show that value and show that, you can get something amazing that you couldn't have a year or two ago, as opposed to like popping bottles on a penthouse roof. And like, you just look like a douchebag.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. I thought real estate is all like the reality shows. I mean, it's all $1 Million Listing New York, right?
No.
That's right. It's the first thing I tell people when they ask me about real estate. I'm like, it is not like the shows, right? So you guys, if you're watching, we got a lot of new people that joined us. I see here on the screen. We still have time with Jason. Go ahead and ask your questions in the chat box. We'll throw them up and we'll ask them on the show. But Jason, now what we're going to do is actually one of my favorite parts of the show is we are going to do my lightning round of questions. And so the premise behind this is, I love to kind of see what's behind the curtain, see what makes people tick, what they're into, what they're interested in. And that's really what I feel makes them successful, their passions and things like that. So the thing I'm going to tell the audience here is I haven't prepped you for this. I didn't give you the lightning round questions, right?
You have not.
Awesome. And so you can, when I ask them, you can answer in any way you want. There's no rules, really. You can explain, give background, or you don't have to. You can just give us the answer and move on. And
show you what's behind my curtain.
Oh, let's see. I hear a lot of honking behind your curtain, which is another reason I don't like New York, by the way. I was going to tell you that I keep hearing honking, and I'm like, that's another reason I don't like New York.
That's the state song. It's just car honking and sirens going off. It's like the official New York City anthem.
That's funny.
Traffic and garbage trucks.
Good stuff, man. So, all right, let's do it, you guys. Let's do the lightning round. First, Jason, I want to give you a big round of applause here because I've just so enjoyed the content. We've gotten so much good value out of it. I know we're taking a lot of notes, so big round of applause. Thank you very much. And now let's do the lightning round. You ready to roll?
I'm ready for the lightning.
All right, let's do it. First question of the lightning round is, what is your superpower?
Knowing how to make a home amazing.
Love it. What are you passionate about outside of your business and career?
My daughter.
Good answer. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh my God. A lawyer, but that's just because like if you have a Jewish mother, they tell you you're supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer.
You got it. Russian parents, even more so. That's how I grew up. When I grew up, Elena and I, my wife, joke about this. There were 3 classes of people. There's doctor, lawyer, and everyone else. So I went to law school, but this is much more fun. Okay, next question is, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to be an artist.
Cool, I like that. All right, this is good for all of our people going to New York and traveling there. What is your favorite restaurant in New York?
Oh my God, you got to give me a subcategory. There's no way to like.
We'll go with favorite restaurant or type of food. How's that?
All right, so my favorite place is called DeFara Pizza. It's out in Midwood, Brooklyn, which is like in the middle of nowhere. It was founded like 60 years ago. Dominic DeFara, the guy's in his 80s.
Oh, wow.
He's every day, just hand makes every pie. It takes about 2.5 hours to get a slice.
Wow.
You would never go there for anything other than to go to DeFara Pizza, this area in Brooklyn, but I think it's just incredible. The place closes, he goes, takes a nap, comes back, does the dinner shift.
I love it.
When he likes out of dough. Yeah, it's a really cool, it's just like it's a treat.
That is awesome. All right, you guys, we'll find it. We'll throw it in the description. So if you're going to New York, go check it out. Next question is, who's your favorite musician or type of music?
Madonna.
Madonna. She's still touring? Maybe?
She is not. No one is touring.
Well, I mean, before this and after this, I guess.
If you're going to say, is she still around, that's going to be an insulting question for someone who's been on the charts for the last 4 decades, but whatever.
No offense. Okay, what is your idea of a perfect vacation?
Somewhere quiet, somewhere outdoors, and somewhere with just like a lake or a body, or just some clean water that you can swim in.
I love it. Good stuff. Okay, we got a couple more questions here. Remember, you get 1 pass except for the last question, which is my favorite. Okay, what natural gift would you like to possess that you don't have?
Oh my God. Natural gift. Oh my God. I wish, I was going to say, I wish I had great hair. You know what? Good hair is a gift.
That's a good one.
Beyonce Knowles' hair is a gift, although it's probably not real, but.
Whose hair? I missed it.
That's a weave. But, yeah, beautiful hair is a gift to people. Like people who could just go like that, they calm people, they make them feel good. Yeah.
I love it.
With good hair.
That's a good one. I like that answer. Okay. Oh, and actually, this is the last question.
I could have said, like, I wish I could save the world or, like, cure COVID, but good hair.
That's funny. No, that's a good one. I like that one. Okay, so this is actually my favorite question. But, when I talk to New Yorkers, this is a little bit different. But the question is, what car best embodies your personality? I'm a car guy, so that's why I like the question.
I don't even have a driver's license.
Okay, so you can pass then. See what I mean? When I talk to New Yorkers, it doesn't resonate well.
Like one of those like zippy VW like buses from the 70s.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. Yeah. See,
I always love those.
See, now we know a little bit more about you because we got that answer right there. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Well, Jason, I got to tell you, this has been so awesome. Before we go, final question really is, if you could kind of boil down your success secrets to maybe a few things, or just share some last words of wisdom with all of our budding entrepreneurs, real estate agents, salespeople, or just buyers and sellers that are checking out the show.
Do what you're passionate about. Figure it out. Your life will become better and more fulfilling when you are just doing what you naturally love and want to do all the time and forget about everything else.
That, my friends, is a great piece of advice. Thank you so much, Jason. This has been a pleasure. I really enjoy having you on and everything that you've shared with our audience and your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hang tight for just a sec. I'll say my goodbyes and then we'll jump back on. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Danny B Live. That was awesome. And I got to tell you, if you take one thing away from this show, you can kind of skip the rest. It was all awesome. But the last piece of advice I will tell you I really, really enjoyed, which is follow your passion, follow your dreams, do what you really like to do. The money will come, the success, the fame, all that will come, but do that. And you guys, on kind of a business note, what I want to share with you is, as you guys know, we have Discover Properties, which is our luxury real estate team. And if you're looking to buy or sell real estate anywhere, we can help you out. We have a great referral network, guys like Jason, that we can send you to. His contact info will be down in the description below if you want to reach out to him. And if you're a real estate agent, entrepreneur, salesperson, title rep, lender, really anything in that area, I coach people to create a business that's predictable, profitable, and fun. I believe those are the three most important things in your business. We have the systems, the tools, the techniques, and all that to make that happen. If you want to chat about your business, you can go to this site right there, bookacallnow.com. You can book a free business strategy session. We'll chat with you. We'll get on the phone. We'll see what's going on in your business, where you want to go, and we'll develop a game plan to help get you there fast. So check that out. You can check out the website, which is just coachdannib.com, or my name. All that stuff is down in the description below. Again, thanks for joining me here on Danny B Live, and I will see you on the next episode next week, if not before. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you do that as well, and hit that like button if you got a lot of value out of this video. Thanks so much, you guys. I'll see you soon. And